Spotify. For most of us, it's pretty much the soundtrack to our lives, right? But behind all those playlists and podcasts, there's this huge business paradox that could define its entire future, and we're going to dive right into it. So get this. After 15 long years, Spotify has finally done something it has never, ever done before. It just had its very first profitable year. I mean, that's a huge milestone. But man, getting to this point was an incredibly expensive trip. We're talking more than $5 billion in total losses just to get here. So, time to pop the champagne, right? Well, maybe not. See, hitting profitability has actually put a giant spotlight on the fundamental problem at the very heart of Spotify's business. And believe it or not, it all boils down to just one number, 70%. This is the figure that is probably giving executives in Stockholm nightmares. Okay, so what does that 70% mean? It means for every single dollar that Spotify makes, a whopping 70 cents goes straight out the door to record labels, publishers, and artists. This one fact, you guys, defines the company's entire struggle. But it also highlights its biggest strength. And let's start there. All right, so first up, let's look at the good stuff, the argument for Spotify. Why is it that, even with that 70% problem, they are so unbelievably dominant? Well, it's because they're the undisputed king of AI, built on this foundation of massive scale and data. And when I say massive scale, I am not kidding. We're talking 675 million monthly active users in over 180 countries. To put that in perspective, that's more than 6 times bigger than their closest competitor, Apple Music. And all that scale? It's the fuel for their biggest weapon. And that weapon is its AI personalization engine. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that magic behind your Discover Weekly playlist, the new AI DJ, and all your daily mixes. It's even translating podcasts in real time now while keeping the host's voice. All these things come together to create a product that feels like it was made just for you. And the impact? It is absolutely staggering. This engine is so good at knowing what you want to hear next that it's responsible for generating, wait for it, 4.5 billion playlist ads every single month. It's basically the world's most powerful hit-making machine. So what's the bottom line here? It's a massive competitive advantage. With all that data from 675 million users, Spotify has built this personalization moat around its business that is just nearly impossible for anyone else to cross. I mean, competitors just don't have that kind of listening data. Okay, but for all that AI brilliance, we've got to talk about the other side of the coin. There's this structural flaw that Spotify just can't seem to shake. And yep, it brings us right back to that 70% problem. So in business speak, they call this a structural margin constraint. It's a really fancy way of saying that unlike a typical tech company, Spotify's biggest cost, those music royalties, goes up at the exact same rate as its revenue. The more you listen, the more they pay. It means their profitability is basically always capped. The math here is super simple, but it's also pretty brutal. Look at it this way. Of every dollar that comes in, a huge 70% chunk is gone. Instantly. Spotify is left with just 30 cents to run its entire global business, paying for engineers, marketing, R&D, all of it. And just look at this comparison to a typical software company. It's night and day. While companies like Salesforce or Adobe get to keep 70, even 80 cents of every dollar as gross profit, Spotify is stuck down there at 30. From an economic standpoint, it honestly looks less like a tech giant and more like a classic media distributor. So you gotta ask, who really holds all the cards here? Well, it's the music industry. To be specific, just 3 companies. Universal, Sony, and Warner control almost 68% of all music in the world. And because Spotify absolutely needs their music to even exist, they have very, very little power to negotiate that 70% royalty rate down. So this whole situation, it sets up what is basically a two-front war for Spotify's future. On one side, they're desperately trying to escape this economic trap. And on the other, they're fighting off some of the biggest companies in the history of the world. So what's their escape plan? Well, it's all about pushing hard into content where they don't have to pay that insane 70% royalty. Take audiobooks, for example. The margins there are way healthier, around 40 to 50%. And video podcasts, they're ad-based, so the margins are even higher, and that's a direct shot at YouTube. But here's the thing. While Spotify is busy fighting to fix its own margins, the tech giants are coming at them with a totally different weapon, the bundle. And honestly, this is a massive threat. Just look at this value proposition battle. Spotify has to convince you to pay about $12 a month just for audio. Meanwhile, for only a little more, Apple gives you music, plus TV shows, games, cloud storage, fitness classes. You get the picture. Apple doesn't even need to make money on music. For them, it's just a little extra something to keep you locked into their world and selling more iPhones. And believe me, the threats do not stop there. You've got TikTok music totally changing how Gen Z finds new songs. You've got the risk that regulators could force royalty rates even higher. And then there's this unstoppable flood of AI-generated music that's about to hit the platform. I mean, the pressure is just coming from every direction. So where does this all leave us? It really comes down to this fundamental identity crisis for Spotify, and how they solve it is going to define their next decade. Okay, let's be clear, Spotify has climbed its first huge mountain. After 15 years and billions of dollars down the drain, they've finally proven that this model can be profitable. That is a massive achievement, no question. But, and this is a big but, that achievement doesn't make the core problem just disappear. See, the stock market values Spotify like it's a high-growth, high-margin tech company, but its actual financial reality, it's that of a low-margin media distributor, totally dependent on a handful of powerful suppliers. And that all brings us to the final, lingering question. With its incredible AI and its massive scale, is Spotify a true tech giant on its way to dominating all of audio? Or is it just the world's best-dressed middleman, forever stuck in a profit paradox that it can never truly escape?